Well, hello everybody. We're back with another episode, winding down to the end of the season. Today we're gonna talk to each other, which is a different setting than you've seen us in, because we're actually doing a series episode in the series of having each other as guests. So, different setting. So today, this is my guest, Holly. Some of you may know her.
They know her and love her.
Yes, and for our little mini series Grief, we're going to be interviewing each other, two-part episode, I guess, about our challenges and, well, I should say not challenges, I should say exploration on grief in our lives. I'm going to do
I like
that.
The word exploration.
Yeah, exploration of grief in our own lives. So, I'll be interviewing Holly today, and then next episode she'll be,
And then I'll be interviewing her.
Yeah,
Yes.
there we go. So, it's time to get hot and heavy here. Break out the tissues, because you know we're probably going to shed some tears here. Grief is a touchy subject. But it doesn't have to be if we talk about it more. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
So, I wrote down some questions for Holly, and she doesn't know what they are. She has no idea what the conversation has to bring, so thanks for playing along.
All I know is that I will cry. That's all I know.
Okay, so my first question for you is, I know that you've talked about it in bits and pieces in each episode, but can you give us like a short family narrative? We're gonna start off from the beginning. Short family narrative. Maybe, how about you start like when you started noticing your family was different and what that looked like, and then maybe tell us like how many siblings you have, how long your parents were together, like those kind of relevant questions to the end games. Yeah, the end game's obviously going to be talking about their passing and what that looked like. So I'll kind of give you that.
The first time I noticed that I can remember, I probably noticed that I feel like I was always kind of like trying to hide who my family was as a child. So I feel like I always kind of knew like other families weren't like my family. Except the families that we directly hung out with. But like I had this distinct memory of a girl coming to stay the night with me, and I don't think she even ended up staying the night. I think either she stayed the night and could never stay the night again after that, or she stayed the night, or was going to stay the night, and then her mom picked her up. But you're going to have to edit this part out. Edit. Go. Upstairs. Go. I'm not here. I'm going to lock this door real quick. Go to Kimmy. Okay? You can't be down here. I'm recording. No. Go talk to Kimmy. Well, that was not supposed to happen. Sorry. Okay. So I think the first distinct memory I have is this girl was going to stay the night with me, and I think her mom picked her up. I don't think she even got to stay the night. And I remember thinking like, oh, like your family's different than my family, and they don't think this is an environment where kids should be or something. I don't know that it made a whole lot of sense to me right away, but I remember feeling like shame, like I can't bring people to my house. And it's not like my parents were terrible or anything. They were alcoholics, but I think people who, in my mind I was like, well, that's normal. I survived, no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like now as a parent, I could, if I were dropping my kid off at somebody's house and the parents were drunk and partying, I'd be like, you know what? Actually, you're not going to stay the night here.
Yeah.
So I remember that being like the first time that I distinctly felt shame around it.
Mm.
And I feel like I just spent a lot of time trying to hide my family, or like wasn't proud to have people meet my family. I was embarrassed. There was a time my mom came to my work. I worked at a steakhouse that had a bar, and she came to my work and she was just shit-faced. and got cut off and was asked to leave. And I just remember being so embarrassed. And my dad was always at the bar every single day. Like, we knew, as kids, we knew all of the bar numbers by heart because that's how we got a hold of our parents.
Yeah. No cell phones back then, folks.
Yeah. And I have 5 brothers and 1 sister. So lots of us kids. And we were sort of just kind of left, not like left, but we were left at home a lot. And we just sort of had to fend for ourselves and figure it out. Like, we had food, we had a roof over our head. Like, it wasn't, we had a really fun childhood in a lot of ways, but there was not a lot of adult supervision.
Got it.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does, because you kind of gave me that narrative of what that looked like in a nutshell, so thank you. So, like, I guess I can relate to this kind of because, like, there was some normalcy behind alcoholism in my family, and until I hung out with other families that didn't have that, I was like, you start, like, kind of comparing, you know, you do that comparing thing. Adolescence, you're always comparing to others, so that was normal. But I also saw, like a lot of the parents that my parents hung out with also had issues. And so, like, you know, that was really normal. Funny?
My friend Megan was just brought this up yesterday. She and I grew up together, and our parents were all alcoholics, but her parents also had some friends that were a little bit, you know, classier. And I went to stay the night with Megan and her other friend Sarah when we were probably 9 or 10. And I got into a fight with this lady's mom because she's like, "Okay, girls, everybody go to pee before bed." And I remember thinking, like, I don't need to pee.
Huh.
And she's like, "Well, you have to go pee before you go to bed." And I'm like, no, I'm not a baby, and I'm not listening to you. So, and it was like a standoff for a solid hour. She was like, "Go pee," and I'm just like, "Make me." Not doing it. I'm not a baby. I'm not gonna pee the bed, and I'm not. And that's like another time when I realized, like, oh, like, there are parents that are, like, really involved and make you, like, do stuff like go pee before bed. Like, I was not open to that, to receiving that, because I had basically, in a lot of ways, been self-sufficient.
Yeah.
And, like, I didn't pee the bed. I knew how to make my own lunch. I knew how to, you know, get myself up in the morning. And I didn't need some lady who didn't even know me telling me that I had to pee before bed.
Yeah.
And that's another example of, like, recognizing that other families were different than my family. And
Yeah.
that was the last time I was ever allowed to stay the night there, in case you were wondering.
Yeah. I just remember feeling so inferior, I guess, sometimes when I would, like, stay with my quote-unquote rich friends. You know, you had your well-off friends who were, like, video games at their house were normal. Like, you have a computer? That's fucking awesome. Like, you know, like, we didn't, you know, like, I mean, we eventually had a computer, but it was, like, a hand-me-down from my mom's boss, and it was, like, a big deal, you know? Like, we didn't just have the things. And by no means did my family struggle. My dad built a business and made a living for himself, but he also suffered from an alcohol problem. So, there was that. So, my next question kind of leads into this conversation that we're going into. What 3 key things, good or bad, did you learn as coping skills from your upbringing?
I think the biggest thing that's a good thing I learned was that I can get through anything. Like, there's
resilience.
not a situation or a problem that can come up that I'm not strong enough to handle. That I'm not strong enough to handle. Like, I'm strong enough to handle anything God throws at me. Not that that's a challenge, God. But it gave me resiliency. Like, when you have struggled in your life, it gives you confidence to know that you can get through those hard things. That it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think it probably gave me a bit of an inferiority complex that's taken me a long time, that I still probably struggle with sometimes. Like, feeling like not good enough or not, I don't know, like I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it, but I feel like it's there kind of under the surface, maybe in my subconscious mind, just like an inferiority thing that it's taken me a long time to let go of. And what else has it taught me? I would say it's taught me to be a better parent, like...
Well, yeah, always better than your own parents, right?
Yeah, like, all you could do is try and be better than the people that came before you. But it gave me some perspective on the things that, rather than just sitting there raging about the things that I wish had been different, instead I feel like I'm implementing it in my kids' lives, hopefully, so that they're getting something different. And they're going to have things that they are upset at me for, that I did wrong or that I didn't do good enough to. Like, that's just the nature of the beast. But all I can do is the best I can do with the information I have, so.
Yeah. So I heard resiliency, I guess, like, the better parenting would be a form of resiliency, or I don't know what you would call that, what fancy word you would put on that, just being better than what you were taught, learning from...
Up-leveling.
Yeah, there you go. And then the second thing was kind of, I wouldn't say a negative, just a opportunity for improvement is what we call that in the business world.
Yeah.
So those three things. When you use these coping skills, and I call them all coping skills because coping skills can be good or bad. Like, we've talked about addiction and how that's a coping skill. We've talked about, anger and how that's a coping skill. So that's why I call them all coping skills. But when you use these in your life today, what kind of things come up for you? Primarily in the inferiority. Like, are you recognizing that coping skill and being like, oh, we're not going to bust that one out just right this moment? Or do you go, ooh, that was probably not the best coping skill to use? Or is it unrecognizable?
When you're framing it that way, it's making me recognize a different coping skill that I have that's much more prevalent.
Okay.
And that is control. Because when you grow up with a lack of control, you want to control everything. It gives you this sense of safety.
Mm-hmm.
But I tried to control everyone and everything around me for a really long time, and including myself, like, have very high standards for myself, for my behavior, for, any challenge that I take on, I am going to be rigorous and very hard on myself and hold myself to a very high standard. And I hold other people to very high standards around me, and I try to control people's behavior because if I can make sure that you're better, you're not going to be able to hurt me in the way that I've been hurt, or disappoint me in the ways that I've been disappointed. And that's been something I think I've been working on a lot in the last 5 years, even in the last year, like letting go of control, surrendering, because control is an illusion, and I'm not actually in control of anyone. And the more pressure I put on the people around me, the less likely they are going to do what I want them to do anyway. Mm-hmm. Like, whatever it is that I'm trying to get them to let go of, they're just going to hold on to stronger because I'm trying to force it away from them. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't work. So I've really, really been trying to just surrender and allow people their own journey. And that includes, like, my children and my partner. Like, it's not your job to tell your kids who they should be. It's your job to love your kids for who they are. And they will find their way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was talking, sorry to veer off into conversation, but I was talking about, like, what boundaries I have set for my kid, and I really don't have a lot of boundaries set for them. Maybe this could be a whole nother episode, but, I really just tell her the consequences of the actions, or of the choices that she can make, and kind of allow her to choose that path. And that can be really hard for a parent. Especially somebody who grew up in an uncontrolled environment that has this, control thing.
What's funny? in looking, I was looking at old pictures of my son today because I'm doing this thing for his graduation, and I was kind of being hard on myself for, the kind of parent that I was when he was young, because I didn't know yet. And I feel like with my older kid, I have, like, my fears for myself, I put onto him. Like, it's going to make me emotional. Ooh.
It's okay.
But, like, as a parent, you're trying to, like, protect your kids from the things that you're scared of. You don't know what it is they're going to be scared of yet. So you're like, shh, be quiet, conform, follow the rules, don't draw attention to yourself. And I think in some ways, I didn't allow him to be the full version of himself as a young kid because I was so worried he was going to get judged for being different or for being loud or for being, drawing a lot of attention to himself or whatever it was. So there was a lot of, shh, be quiet, sit still, which is what parents do when you have a little kid. And I feel like now that he's technically an adult, he's starting to come back around to, like, that like, childness. Like, he's starting to inject a little bit more of that into his personality where he cares a little bit less what other people think. But I feel like he cared a lot what other people thought for a long time, and I know that's me.
You were the catalyst. And that's okay, and I love that we're having this conversation because this is completely relevant to the feelings that you're going to have in grief. So, Are you ready to move on to that part?
I'm ready.
Okay, because I think you just
Bring it on!
I think you just walked us into the next question.
Okay.
So, did those coping skills... So, actually, I'm going to ask this one first. Actually, no, just kidding. Flying by the seat of our pants, people. You're along for the ride. So those coping skills that you talk about, did they help or hinder your grieving process? So if none of you have listened to us talk about our parents before, both Holly's parents passed. Her dad passed at a younger age, her mom just more recently. And so you've had to grieve both of them, and that's really hard. And so I want to just say that at the beginning, that I love that you're vulnerable enough and feel safe enough to share this with everybody. I'm going to get emotional, dang it.
Me?
Yeah, I just want to commend you on that. But yeah, did those coping skills that you have, like the control, the resilience.
I think resiliency definitely helped me. Like, there are people I know that haven't been through really hard stuff, and if they had lost a parent, I'm not sure how they would deal with it because they hadn't been through hard stuff. Losing my dad, that was the first close person that I lost, and I was 19. And even then I had that resiliency of, like, doesn't matter, I'm going to get through it. I am strong and I can get through it. So that definitely helped me. And my need for control helped me because, there's a lot that goes into planning a funeral and getting things done that need to be done. You have to go through their things. You have to pack up their apartment. You have to, make sure you call my dad had, like, a tiny insurance policy that was enough to cover his funeral. And, making sure that funds were going where they needed to go. And I think that resiliency and control really helped me in those aspects. And with my mom, because, you got to plan a funeral and you got to have photos and you got to write the eulogy and, you're doing all these things. And if you don't have that strength and control, it's going to be very hard to do. Mm-hmm. And those things definitely helped me in getting through that process. But also, I think the need to control my grief also maybe hindered me a little bit in actually grieving for a while. Like, it just sort of pushed it down because it's like, nope, I can't deal with this right now. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be in control. That's not to say I didn't cry and I wasn't sad, because I was, but I think the real grief of that kind of was a little bit more delayed.
So you're talking about planning both of your parents' funerals. How many siblings did you say you had? And I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, just to let you know. But
I have 5 brothers and 1 sister,
okay.
But I am the oldest daughter.
You're the oldest daughter. So you're the oldest.
I'm not the oldest, but I'm the oldest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And so did that just naturally fall on you too?
I just naturally.
Or did you naturally took it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And like with my dad, my older brother helped me with my dad's stuff. You know, like we had to go through his stuff and we had to organize all that and call people. And my older brother definitely helped me do that. And he probably helped me plan the funeral too. It's hard to remember because it's been so long. Yeah. But in my mind, like, I was trying to control everything and make sure everything, all the things were. I've always been like the organized one, the one that's like, this is what we need to do. I have a list. These are the people we need to call. This is what needs to be paid for. You know, like, I've always been kind of the organized one.
And you were kind of you were kind of the overseer in your family too, growing up, right? Yeah, I've heard you say that.
I basically mommed everybody. And I don't know that anybody asked me to, but I sort of just fell into that role. I even mommed my mom. So, and when she passed, I think everybody was just like, okay, Holly, what do we do? Because I think they just expect that from me at this point. Mm-hmm. Like I'm the glue.
Yeah. So when you think of your parents passing, I'm going to ask this question. It's kind of a taboo, but I feel like talking about it is important. Did you feel a sense of relief when your parents passed? Because of the weight that you had to hold?
Not with my dad, because I was only 19. With my dad, I felt with both of them, I felt a lot of regret. But with my dad specifically, because I was so young, I just felt regret because I'd been so hard on him and so mean to him.
What did that look like?
Well, my dad, he would spend some time with us, like he'd always take us camping and stuff, but for the most part, he was just at the bar a lot. He provided food, he provided a roof over our heads, but he just didn't, I don't know, he wasn't what I thought a dad should be.
Got it.
And he and I had several big fights, and me basically calling him out and telling him all the ways in which he was screwing up, and him not really knowing how to talk to me, or like, you know, he wasn't ever going to change, and I don't think, like, I put all this pressure on him to change and be somebody different, and that never works. And so when he died, I just felt kind of sad that would never be repaired. Mm-hmm. Which, coincidentally enough, is the same thing that happened when my mom died. Because I have a habit of putting a lot of pressure on people to be perfect, because nobody in my life ever was. So, you know, I put a lot of pressure on my mom to be perfect too, and she was never going to be perfect either, and she was never going to change either. They were who they were, and in life, I just couldn't accept that. And I don't think there was ever going to be a way where I was gonna, while they were still here. And I think when they passed, not only was I confronted with that and felt regretful, but I think that's when I was able to allow them to be who they were. Like, not until they were gone would I allow them to be who they were. Because I just couldn't. I didn't have those skills. I didn't know what I didn't know. And when they finally did go, you know, I had to kind of, through my grieving, I realized that I had put a ton of pressure on them and that they weren't ever going to change. And that instead of appreciating the relationship that I did have, I was mourning the one that I wasn't going to ever get.
Got it. And then talk about the relief a little bit with your mom.
My mom was getting bad. You know, she was, I want to say she died at 56. And already she was like, she couldn't go out in public. She would fall down. She'd pee her pants. She'd, you know, hurt herself or make a fool out of herself. And her friends stopped coming to get her. I didn't want to take her anywhere. And my sister would take her to the grocery store because I got to the point where I just did not want to be in public with her. I thought it was embarrassing. And my sister, bless her heart, she would just send me pictures of them in the grocery store and be like, Mom looks like an old rock star. And she would just find the humor in it and like the joy in it. And they could, she'd have my mom come sleep on her couch and they'd watch movies and stuff. And she could have that relationship with her that I could not have.
Mm.
And I think, in a way, I was a little bit relieved because I thought we were going to have to take care of her forever. I thought she was going to live to be 80 and have, like, dementia or something, and we were going to have to just take care of her. And I remember telling my sister, I was like, she's going to have to live with you. Like, there's no way I can live with this woman. Like, and we had talked about it. We were, like, thinking, like, okay, where can we build, like, a mother-in-law house? Whose house is she going to sleep in? What room? Like, we thought her husband was going to die and that she'd be living forever.
Mm.
And then it went the opposite way. And we were all like, what?
Yeah.
So, but there was a little relief in that. And I don't feel guilty saying that because...
Thank you. That's kind of why I
think a lot of
the
people
question.
do feel guilty about that,
Yeah.
But I think it is what it is. You know what I mean? Taking care of another human being, especially an adult human being, is a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And especially a person that had no desire to take care of themselves while they were alive.
Or, like, anybody who's grown up with a parent who has a hold on something else. I don't want to say... In our instances, it was addiction. You talk about kind of regretting that. Or not regretting that, resenting that. You kind of have a sense of, like, I don't want to do this because you were such a shitty parent when I grew up. Like, know.
And she really wasn't a shitty parent. Like, in a lot of ways, she was a really good mom.
Well, same for me, too. I mean, I don't mean to say that and just, that's the end-all, be-all. But I do think that thought comes naturally sometimes of, like, you didn't do this for me. Why do I have to do it for you?
Well, and I think... with my mom, like, I saw her take care of her father-in-law when he was old and couldn't shower himself and stuff. Like, she took care of him. And she used to always tell us, like, when I'm old, you guys better not put me in a home. You better take care of me. Mm-hmm. And I think my mom really had a heart of gold. And she would have taken care of anybody. Like, she did take care of us. But, I didn't want to take care of her. I didn't. And maybe that makes me a bit of an asshole, but...
No, it's a normal feeling.
At the end of her life, I was so focused on all the ways that she wasn't the mom I wanted her to be, that it's almost like I had blinders on for the ways that she was a good mom. And it's like, it's so ironic, like as soon as she died, it's like the blinders lift. And you're like, fuck, there was a lot of good there too. And I just couldn't see it. I was so angry at her that I just couldn't see, like, I forgot all about the mom that would bring us treats from the store every time she went. Mm-hmm. Would make sure we had everything we needed. Mm-hmm. Would talk to us, would try, She really, really did love us. She was an alcoholic and she just could not, in this lifetime, there was no way she was going to heal that. And I just couldn't accept that. Not until she was gone. So.
Well, thank you for sharing. And there's another platform that you've shared on. You wrote a book about this, right?
It's called Hello, Mom. Goodbye.
I knew you'd have that on deck.
Well, I was flipping through it thinking, like, in case you asked me something about
the
it.
Conversation, yeah. I just wanted to put a little shout out to, because I know that book was really hard for you and it took a while, and but it was very near and dear to your heart, so I just wanted to do a little shout out of your book.
Writing that book was probably the biggest therapy for me that I could have gotten. Like, this book helped me to get to know my mom in a way that I didn't when she was alive. Like, it helped me remember all the good stuff, too, and process the bad stuff. Like, there's journal prompts in it and stuff where you write a letter to your mom.
Ooh, that's cool.
And so, like, after each chapter, like, okay, there's one on anger, and you write a letter to your mom, like, dear mom, I am so mad at you for all these reasons. And you write all that stuff down. And then there's, like, a chapter on forgiveness where you're like, dear mom, and you forgive her for all the things you were mad at her for. Or, you know, you write down all the regrets that you have or the things you wish could have been different. And it's a hard book to get through. Like, as a person, like, for me, writing it, this has been literally the hardest thing I've ever done in my whole life, writing this book. Because it made me confront a lot of really heavy emotional stuff. But on the other side of that, I found so much growth and so much healing, and I feel so much better about it. And I feel like now I can look back and remember my mom was just a human being. You know what I mean? She didn't make all the right choices, but who the fuck does?
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
And maybe hers were a little bit bigger because she was an alcoholic and she was in charge of taking care of lives. But we're all doing the best we can, and none of us have it figured out, really.
Right.
And writing this book helped me to kind of get to that.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, I have a few people I want to share that with, so we'll link it in the comments for anybody who wants, or link it in the bio, or whatever you call that, social media. Holly does all the
Captions.
social media.
We'll link it in the captions.
There's the word. For anybody who wants to purchase it, and use it as a tool. So that kind of walks us into my final question is, what have you learned through each grieving period for each parent, since that looked different?
I think with my dad, what I learned was that people are not here forever. And you think being angry and holding a grudge against somebody feels like this big power move, but they could literally die in the middle of that power move, and then you realize it's not a power move at all. That's just me being a brat and holding a grudge. And people literally can die at any moment. This life is precious, and nobody is here forever. And I think that's the biggest lesson I learned with my dad. To lose somebody that you're angry at, that you have not forgiven, is a really tough pill to swallow. You know, it hurts you more than it hurts them. And with my mom, I feel like it was that same lesson again. It's like the universe, like, beating me over the head, like, I fucking told you. Why haven't you learned this yet? But also, with her, I learned, you know, we're all human beings. And we're all doing the best we can. And also, I feel like I learned, like, to be thankful for the things that went wrong. Because despite the way I was raised and all of the ways that I was raging mad about it, those things really have made me into a cool person that I really genuinely love. Like, I love myself. I love how strong I am. I love that, you know, if shit hits the fan, I got it. I love that I am taking care of everybody around me, and I got that from my mom because my mom took care of everybody around me. It feels good. I love feeding people. I love, you know, hugging people. I love telling people how wonderful they are. And all of those things, I think, came in both having my parents as my parents and going through what I went through, but also in losing them. You know, that I learned more from losing them than I learned ever from them being alive. And those were big, hard lessons that I don't wish on anybody, but in the biggest, most painful periods of your life, you will learn the most. It will change you regardless of if you want to change or not. You're going to learn things you didn't even want to learn.
Yeah.
And it's going to be hard, but you get through it, and then it's like you've leveled up as a human being, and you're able to hold more compassion and more space. And you recognize that, you know what, there's a lot of pain in the world, and pain and love, they're so close. They're so close together. And if you can be with somebody else in their pain, or, you know, stop being afraid of that pain, it takes you closer to the love.
Yeah. And that's exactly, I'm so glad you said that, because that's exactly what we talked about when we wanted to make a series on grief. grief is not something people want to talk about. I don't even want to talk about it. I think it's uncomfortable as fuck. But,
it's hard.
you know, it's not, but it's something that needs to be talked about, and these feelings that you have need to be brought to the surface because everybody else fucking feels them.
Well, and it's hard to grieve and be sad, but it's also honoring the people that you love to be able to grieve them. Like,
and it's
I feel
100% normal.
And love together.
Yeah. And it's 100% normal to do that. Like, you don't have to flip between the feelings, and you don't have to have one feeling and not another. I think that society puts so much pressure on how grief should look like, and it looks different for everybody. And that's just how it is.
I think people try to run from grief.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
And they try to not feel it. And I think not only is that hard on you, but like, grief is part of life.
Absolutely.
And on the other side of that grief are some really beautiful treasures. You know, if I hadn't allowed myself to grieve my parents and really, really sit with the sadness and the terrible, terrible, terrible feelings that came along with that, I would not be able to feel the capacity of love for them that I feel. Yeah. And it's like you can't have one without the other. The pain and the love are so intertwined. And if you're pushing away the grief, you're pushing away the love too. If you're pushing away the bad memories, you're pushing away the good ones too.
Anybody ever heard of yin and yang? You have to have both.
Yeah.
So, is there any final thoughts that you have on your journey with grief that you would want to share that you haven't already? I wanted to give you the opportunity if there wasn't a question that I asked.
I want to just say, grieving parents, and I feel like maybe I'm making there's no science to this, but this is what's coming up for me. I feel like boys with their dads and girls with their moms are a little bit different. Like, the bond that I felt with my dad was a little different than the bond I felt with my mom. Like, I would imagine my brothers felt differently with my dad than I did, because it's that sacred male bond that, you know, you're severing. And with my mom, I just distinctly remember feeling like a balloon whose string had been cut. Like my tether to the world had been cut. And I didn't know how to exist in a world that didn't have her here. And I used to make fun of people that would, like, not make fun out loud, but in my head, of people who'd, like, lost their parents and they still couldn't get over it. And I'm just like, oh my God, you're still sad about this? Get over it. But it's really something like, it's more than losing a parent. It's like losing part of your identity, because you view yourself through,
and so unexpectedly
through their lens. You know what I mean? Like, they tell you who you are. Yeah, and they tell you who you are. You know what I mean? Like by how they view you, you start to learn your own identity, and they're the container in which you grow into the person that you are. And when they're gone, it's almost like, shit, am I still this person? Like, who am I now? I'm the adult?
Well, I think I want to just caveat that. Sorry to cut you off. But I think that people feel like grief has a beginning and an ending, but it really doesn't. Grief is... judged you. Like, once it's also, there, it's a part of your life. Grief,
it really is an ebb and a flow, and there are times when it's just like, it's totally fine. Like, you feel fine. You have it under control. And then there are other times when it hits you, and it feels just as heavy as the day that it happened. You know? Like...
No. No.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
It's like cords of a rope.
You got me. You got me a couple times
there. They all go together and they go on forever. Like, love's in there, grief's in there,
okay. We're talking about some
hardships
hard shit.
In there, blessings are in there.
Thank you for
They're
sharing.
all interwoven.
I appreciate your story.
And they continue on forever, and you can't take one out.
If anybody's listening to this episode and has something pulling their heartstrings, let us know. We always love those moments.
It does. And if you can incorporate it, it's actually less painful than the pain of trying to push it away. So...
Yeah. Cool.
I knew I was...
Well, thank you for being my guest today. Turn it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you everybody for listening. Leave us comments, send us emails if you want to hear anything else about
that you know
grief
lost a parent and you want to share that with them,
in
or you want to
the
share the book
potential
with them,
third season.
please do so. That would be awesome.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you everybody for listening. Thank you, Holly, for sharing.
You're welcome. Tune in for part 2 where we're in the same outfits, but we switch roles. Yes. Love you.